I'm Matt Rothschild, the editor of the Progressive Welcome. It's a great day to be a progressive in Wisconsin. It's a great day to be a Madisonian. We're making history today. We're making history this whole last month. And though the corporate mainstream media isn't paying attention to the magnitude of what's going on here, not a surprise, but these are the biggest sustained mass rallies for labor unions that this country has seen since the 1930s. And these are the biggest sustained mass rallies ever in the history of the United States for public sector workers. So give yourselves another hand, and a hand for everyone who's been showing up at the Capitol. Before we get going, I'd like to thank Steve and Lucy and Al from the Barrymore Theater for giving us this venue. I'd like to thank Yid Vicious for their klezmer music, what I call soul music. And I'd like to thank our co-sponsors, FightingBob.com, the Center for Media and Democracy, the Capital Times, 92.1 The Mic, and our great community radio station, WORT. And special thanks to Norm Stockwell of WRT for handling everything that he does. We've got a lot of great speakers tonight, so I'm not going to try to talk too long, but I do want to say a few things. Historians, if they're any good, will note that in February and March of 2011, class consciousness resurfaced in a big way in America. You know, Noam Chomsky has noted many times that we have a very class-conscious society at the very top, but not so much below that, because for the longest time they've divided us, first by race, and then by gender, and then on all sorts of diversionary social issues. And this time they tried to divide us, private sector workers versus public sector workers. And the attempt failed, and it's failed miserably. And why has it failed? I mean, it's failed because, as Michael Moore said so well last week, people finally had enough. They know they've been taking it on the chin for the last 3 decades, while the top 1% has been laughing all the way to the bank. And so people are fighting back. And it came as a surprise. It came as a surprise, certainly, to Scott Walker. It came as a surprise. Came as a surprise to the Fitzgeralds. Came as a surprise to the Koch brothers. I think a lot of the corporate elite thought that people would take it lying down, would sleep right through it. And maybe they weren't crazy to think so, because a lot of people have been taking it lying down for a long time. Some have been fighting back, but we have 15, 16 million people unemployed, and we haven't seen 15, 16 million people in the streets, or 1/10 of that, or 1/100th of that. 5 million, 6 million people have been kicked out of their homes because of these bankers who just screwed them out of their houses and gave them unscrupulous loans. And we haven't seen 5 million or 500,000 or 50,000 people massing to demand their homes back. But the crudeness of this attack right here in Wisconsin has fired people up, caught Walker off guard. He didn't count on the Wisconsin progressive spirit. And even some in the ruling class, like in Forbes magazine, have pointed out that he's overreached now. Because the ruling class would much prefer to rob people when they're asleep than when they're wide awake and in your face. So you got to ask yourself, why did Scott Walker persist? Well, there's that. There's certainly that. But he's also a megalomaniac. He's on a huge power trip. He also thinks he's getting the word from God. This is a man who says that God told him to take his first job at IBM and his second job at the Red Cross, and God told him who to marry, and God told him when to run for governor. I mean, he's a little like George W. And he's pushing the most right-wing Republican corporatist agenda. And it has both a political aspect and an economic one. Politically, as the Fitzgerald brothers admitted, on Fox of all places, by defunding the unions, they want to make it a lot harder for Obama to win in Wisconsin. So that was their narrow goal. But I think we'd be mistaken to focus on that narrow goal because the agenda goes far, far beyond 2012. Because the agenda they're pushing is the oldest agenda in the book. It's the agenda of the aristocracy. It's the agenda that Thomas Jefferson warned us against. It's the agenda of corporate power that Abraham Lincoln warned us against. It's what the populists fought. It's what the progressives fought. It's what Eugene Victor Debs and the socialists fought. It's what the AFL and the CIO and FDR fought. And it's what we're fighting today. Because, you know, it's really the crucial fight. Because with the Citizens United case last year, the Supreme Court, by 5-4 vote, cleared a path for corporations to buy our democracy. And then in the workplace, the only thing that stands between a corporate dictatorship is government regulations and unions. And the J.P. Morgans and the Koch brothers have always opposed both. They've already knocked the teeth out of the government watchdog, almost all the teeth anyway. And now they're waging this all-out assault on unions so they can force everyone to have to work for the most abusive employer at the lowest wage with no benefits. They want to return us to the days of grapes of wrath. That was their paradise. They want a return ticket to it. So this is what it's about, friends. It's about democracy in our political system. It's about fairness in our economic system. And it's nothing less than that. Fighting Bob La Follette back in 1909 said this is the largest and the hardest battle ever fought for democracy. But he was confident we'd win. And now, after the last 4 weeks, I'm more confident than ever that he was right. I'd like to introduce you to an old friend of mine, Bill Franks. He's the chief steward with AFT Wisconsin, Local 4848. Bill's been a fighter for justice his whole life. He was a conscientious objector during Vietnam. And he's been a staunch union man ever since.
I just called up the boss, my wife. I said, I'm gonna be on radio. I said, I hope they have a bleep machine. Because otherwise, I might as well turn around and go back home right now. That being said, I actually do get paid to speak for a living, so I know how to do this the right way. And that's what we're gonna do this evening. I am a professional, you'll see shortly. The great black poet and troubadour Gil Scott-Heron once opined on one of his famous poems, "The revolution will not be televised." The revolution won't be no rerun, brother. The revolution will be live. Well, guess what? It's 2011 and the revolution is being televised. It is a rerun, however. Listen to me, it is a rerun. We done seen this before. We done seen this before. You folks that were back there in Nam, you folks that were in Memphis, you folks that knew King when King was a baby. You know, King is no historical figure for me. If you were sitting there looking at him, it ain't history. Okay? This has happened before. So what do? Apparently, the revolution is being televised and it's live, it's a rerun, however. Whenever 40% of the eligible voters stay home or make stupid decisions not based on their own self-interest, but based on misinformation, disinformation, and apathy, you get the kind of results we've seen recently in Wisconsin. So don't act like you're amazed, okay? Don't be amazed. The truth of the matter is we were asleep at the switch. We failed to convince our comatose sisters and brothers to come to their own aid. You hear what I'm telling you? Consequently, we allowed the real haves, the corporations and their lackeys, and would-be Republicans, because anybody making $30,000, $40,000 and think they can afford to be a Republican is not living in any kind of reality. The real Republicans don't recognize them, because the real haves are them, and these folks that think they can afford these principles, they can't afford them. That's not in your self-interest. That's what we got to cure as a pathology, okay? Now, we have to accept responsibility for this failure and get over the denial of having let this catastrophe take place. You have to forgive yourself for not having done everything you could have done to stop it from happening. That's all I'm saying. Okay? Okay, now that we're over it, and we better be, because guess what? We ain't got time to be wallowing in no damn kind of pity. You feel me? You understand what I'm saying? The real battle began on March 10, 2011, when the forces of evil eviscerated 50 years of labor peace and discarded Wisconsin's labor statute, which allowed public workers to collectively bargain. Now, mind you, the title of the law was the Labor Peace Act. The title they put to the law was the Labor Peace Act, Gaylord Nelson. The purpose of the law was to regulate the interests of the public, the employer, and the labor, so that the public would still receive the services to which they are entitled by their government, without the employers and labor's disputes and differences disrupting or interfering with the deliverance of vital services to the public that we serve. Okay, do I need to repeat that? Matt will get the speech and you can read it yourselves online. There's no need trying to differentiate us from taxpayers. We are taxpayers. We are taxpayers and pay damn well more than what our share should be, our fair share. Some of us even lend the government money, as evidenced by the fact that a number of us receive tax returns. Why do you think you receive them returns? You're lending your government money. Aren't we generous? Don't you feel generous? To a fault? Okay, so that happens every year. So you know who we are. We are the people, right? Now, in conclusion, because Matt said keep this to 8 minutes, I've probably been at about 6 now, it's time to roll. How could we allow 50 years of collective bargaining history to go up in a cloud of dust and a hearty high old silver? I'll tell you, by not insisting that our members actively participate in the democratic life of our unions. I'm talking to trade union people now. We've become entirely too bureaucratic and too laid back to ensure that our sisters and brothers remain on constant alert. It's no secret that a small fraction of our unions are run by a few people. My union has 5,000 people in it. Probably 3 dozen people run the damn union. You feel what you see what I'm saying? That's not enough. That's not good enough. So when the time comes to activate the troops, our troops are unfamiliar with what actions they could take to neutralize our enemies. The large corporations who don't pay their fair share of anything don't have this problem. They've overcome that problem. We need to overcome that problem among ourselves. One thing you can count on, our enemies, they don't need this kind of discussion. They don't have it. They make a decision, it's done. Therefore, what we have to do is that we have to get over the confusion among ourselves and realize what's in our best interest, and never again do some of the things we've done. So in this moment of apparent crisis, I urge the following actions be taken. And it's simple, and it's 4 steps. Let's make a commitment to never again be complacent about the rights we once had and must now redouble our efforts to regain. That's number 1. Number 2, let us never again place our trust in the untrustworthy. Number 3, let's learn to define for ourselves what our self-interests are as working class people. I have no idea what the term middle class means. Does anybody? No. We ain't got no classes in this country. We have income groups. This is not England or places that recognize class. We don't have that much consciousness. Maybe we need to work on that. Yeah, well, the socialists could teach you something about that. I'm trying to learn. Finally, and I'm out of here after this, let's resolve to remember this moment as the moment that kicked off our lack of apathy and re-engagement in the democratic process and the reinvigoration of the trade union movement in Wisconsin, the United States of America, and the world. Solidarity.